All right, so what seems to be happening with Paul? He is definitely not in contention in a lot of events, and he's going to Europe. What is all this about? Let's get into it. About 92% of you are watching this but not subscribed, so if you could subscribe, it would really mean a lot to me. All right, so there's definitely some chatter about like, is Paul falling off? Is he washed? And I definitely have to say that is just not the case. Looking at his stats, it is so very clear that he is not playing any worse than he has in previous seasons. And looking at his U-Disc, it is actually hilarious because he's actually performing better than he was last year. But of course, that means that the parity is just that much better, and we have a lot more players in the sport that are at that elite level that Paul has been at for 5 years, if not even 10. And basically, the only thing that has gotten worse is his C2 putting, but I would say that's such a small sample size because the entire tour hasn't finished yet, and so just a small decrease in C2 is basically not the reason why he's performing worse in these events. And I was honestly kind of shocked when I looked at the U-Disc and found that the exact same percentages of basically every stat were either identical or off by just like 1 or 2 percentage points. But with that said, it is important to talk about what he is feeling, and in a recent post on Instagram, he mentioned that in Jonesboro, things just didn't go quite as planned. He is still having some struggles. There's definitely some improvements that he wants to be making and some technique changes, and he specifically mentions he is very excited to bring the fire to the second half of the year, and I think that is definitely a good sign for improvement for Paul. We also have to mention that the entire play for the current first half, while the stats are the same, the standings have a very different story. So looking at last year, there were 9 events that he finished top 5 or better. And then if you broaden that to top 10, he had 14 events that was top 10 finishes. But then for this year, excluding New Worlds, he has 0 events within the top 5, and he has a 6th place finish at LVC. Other than that, it's either 10th or worse. And this is definitely not a terrible sign, but it is definitely weird for Paul to be existing in this spot where he's not really that much of a conversation point for a tournament. This is a totally new ground. This is new territory. He's currently ranked 9th in the tour ranking. But if you look at his worst place finish, it would be 25th at Music City Open. And if your worst is 25th, then I think you're doing pretty fine. And his 25th, while it does sound not the greatest, compare that to DDO where he missed cash and got 51st. It is definitely possible to exist in some of these tournaments where you just don't play very good, but you are still a phenomenal player. And before I talk about all the things that could be compounding to why he is in this position outside of disc golf, let's talk about just disc golf itself. So I think it is definitely possible that it may not even be anything to do with Paul, but everyone else around him. People are understanding the courses better, they're understanding new shots, and they're practicing those shots again and again and again, whereas Paul has been doing his repetition for a literal decade, if not 2 decades. So there's only so much improvement a single player can make when they've already been grinding for so long, versus you have players like Isaac Robinson who are absolutely destroying right now and have totally figured out a whole new play style and rapidly improving. And to add on to that, we have Gannon Buhr, who is playing phenomenal, figuring out C2 just as good, if not better than Isaac Robinson. And we kind of like the new guard because you have players like Eagle who you would suspect to have phenomenal finishes, but just aren't really at the moment. I think it really is people are becoming career disc golfers. They're no longer playing disc golf on the side, playing it as a hobby. These pros are practicing day and night, and sure, they have some like funny social media, but they're actually grinding away so much. And not just grinding away at a course, but actually doing field work, technique work, and doing the things that you need to do to become an elite level player, whereas a lot of other players in older years would just kind of practice hard, but they wouldn't do the fundamental changes that you need to do to throw consistent shots on all these insane lines that require deadly accuracy. All right, so now on to why I think there is a lot of things going on in Paul's life that lead to where we are right now. So outside of his actual disc golf playing, I think there is a lot going on with Discraft. I think he has a lot of promotional material that he has to work on. If you check out his Instagram, there's always something up. He's always promoting something, or there's something new that he is trying to work on with Discraft. Having that constant work has to be very draining, and it leads you to not focus on disc golf nearly as much. And that is just one endeavor. Next up would be the foundation. He's opened up a lot of courses, given away a lot of discs, and of course with that comes a lot of administration work. Obviously, he's not doing everything. He has a team that helps him out, but there's still a ton of work that I'm sure he has to deal with as the head of the foundation and trying to truly make it one of the best influences that exists currently in disc golf. And besides that form of philanthropy, he also has 2 major courses that he has purchased that he is currently working on. Obviously, we know about New London, one of the best courses that I've ever seen. I have yet to actually play it. I really want to, but the maintenance on that for the last past couple of years has to be an insane amount of work, and he has to check in on it every so often to make sure that it still is in pristine shape like he wants it to be. And to head on to this, it is a world's course for 2024, so it is definitely going to get a lot of spotlight. And then of course we have the Throwdown the Mountain course, which he just purchased, and I'm not sure what kind of effort goes into that, but I am sure it is not zero, and that definitely takes up some of his time, even though he is a co-owner with Dylan Cease. And then there's also the reality that tour life can be extremely draining. You have to drive to so many different places, do a ton of media engagements. As an elite level player such as Paul, he is constantly going on to interviews, talking with people, and he's been doing it for so long that I bet he's just a little bit drained. The idea of practicing every waking hour is probably just a little bit less appealing to him at the moment. And I'm sure he is still just elite enough to do that insane putting challenge he used to do, where it was like you putt 5 putts and then if you miss one you restart, and he did it for like 120 putts, something crazy like that. I'm sure he could still do that. I'm sure that is in his repertoire. So just because he's practicing less does not mean he is out of it by any means.
What are you gonna do now?
But I think the days of him winning events are certainly few and far between, because while he has won 2 majors in the last 2 years, which was amazing, other than that, there's only the Des Moines Challenge and Waco that he has won. And that still is pretty impressive. 4 wins in 2 years is definitely nothing to shrug off, but I think it is definitely a show of some decline because the field is getting that much better. And I think this is the first year where the parity is just so insanely high that you're just not going to get a win unless you do something truly remarkable on the course, which Paul certainly can do, but it is much harder to get that kind of play in. And to go along with that, we still see those moments of brilliance at Throwdown the Mountain at New World, where he is playing great disc golf. Obviously the field is kind of non-existent, but we still see amazing play from him, so we know he has it in him. And we're just like 1 year out from that phenomenal 16 under at Northwood Black, which I will never forget. That is just insane. I still can't believe he actually got that. But now let's talk about the craziest point in disc golf history, for me at least, and that would be that the GOAT, Paul himself, is not playing for the next 2 months asterisks in the US. So he is going to be playing 7 events in Europe, and not only that, but he'll be getting filmed by DGN, and to go along with that, they'll be producing some documentary content. I'm not sure what that'll actually look like, but we'll definitely get to see what his journey will be on that Europe trip. He'll be playing in Croatia, Czech Republic, Norway, Sweden, and he'll be ending that tour with the European Open. And with an insane 2nd place finish, losing to Eagle, I am sure he is eager to get back his title of European Open champion, but it certainly will be tough with the elite level players that will be showing up. And I think it'll be definitely more so true than ever before, because we finally have players having the budgets, having the most ability to get their sponsors to pay for them to go to Europe. So I'm really excited to see how that all turns out. And we'll also get to see some European players really show themselves, because right now it is very few and far between where we actually get to see some European players really flex their skills. And while his play is certainly not falling off by any means, I definitely think that since he announced going to Europe in January, there's definitely been this feeling like things are just happening that are much more important than his disc golf playing, and that going to Europe and getting to experience a totally new version of tour where it's not just a bunch of the same courses again and again. He will get a truly new experience, and it's not really about him winning, it's just about him having a fun time playing disc golf, because I am sure there are moments where he just does not have that, and that might be consistent for the past couple of years. So overall, it does seem like Paul's play is getting worse, but looking at the stats, that is not the case. He just has a lot more people fighting for that win. I definitely think he will be playing phenomenal for the rest of the year, but he may not get a win, and that does not mean he is having a bad season by any means. And I definitely could see a world where we get this elite level Paul showing up as his reprieve in Europe, and he comes back to the US with some fire in his eyes, pulling a Paige when she was in Hawaii, and coming back and getting some wins on his belt. It is certainly possible, and I'm really excited to see what that looks like. And it's definitely possible that we will get to stream the European events on DGN. I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but that very well might be a possibility. So you might get to see some European highlights with Paul in league card. That would be so much fun to watch. Let me know what you guys think. This is certainly a weird time in disc golf where the best of the best is currently falling a little bit in the standings, still playing phenomenal disc golf, just not quite winning as much, which is crazy because his play is still phenomenal. There's just players out there that are playing that much better. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Wild Runs signing out. Peace.